If they asked me, I could write a book about the way you walk and whisper and look.
And joining us now on our Book Talk segment, great to welcome a woman who has put together a book that's going to be very helpful, I'm sure, to a lot of people. It's called Medicinal Herbs, A Beginner's Guide. And we're talking to Rosemary Gladstar today. She has been studying about herbs and teaching about it for a long time, and she joined us today on the telephone. And Rosemary, good to talk with you. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Good to be here.
You're up in Vermont, right?
I am, where the golden, shiny, rainy leaves are coming down. It's so beautiful today.
I was going to say, I spent a lot of time in a neighboring state up in New Hampshire over the years, but it's a nice place to be this time of year.
Yeah. Makes up for the winter.
We don't get the changing of the leaves down here in Florida, so.
Yeah.
Well, I was glad to read through your book, and I was happy to see so many things in there that are helpful to us. And first of all, how did you get interested in the medicinal herb? Has something always been an interest to you?
You know, I feel like I was like one of those lucky kids. I grew up close to my grandmother, and my grandmother was this incredible herbalist from Armenia. And she used to take all of us children when we were small, for grandchildren, out into the fields and the gardens, and she'd help us weed, but she'd always be telling us what the weeds were used for and how she'd use them. And she used to tell us it was her belief in God, because she was a deeply religious woman, and her knowledge of the plants that saved her life, because she was a survivor of the Armenian genocide. And she just felt it was part of her religious duty, I think, to teach all of us about those plants. And I just ate it up. I don't know, it really just sunk deeply into my soul, and I've sort of been doing it ever since then. I opened my first herb store in the early 1970s and opened up a little herb school right around that same time, which is still functioning, still running beautifully. And I just kind of ran with it, and it's been beautiful to watch the resurgence and renewed interest in plants and in natural healing.
Yeah, I think, nothing wrong with, the modern medicine today, but a lot of the original medicines that people knew what leaves or what plants to go to help themselves, right? So it's been around a long time. It just, we got away from it, I guess. Huh?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, our modern system of healing, of course, is remarkable, and it is the best system in the world for life-saving situations, and, especially for pain management and for symptom suppression. It's really fabulous for those kinds of things. But those everyday bumps and bruises of life, the common everyday things that people get, like your colds and even your flus, your digestive upsets, skin rashes, all those kinds of things, those are so much more sensible to use natural remedies that don't have side effects and that are safe and effective and inexpensive, So, and it's interesting because herbalism is still used as the primary system of healing in many places in the world. We're one of the few countries where it just went deeply underground right around after World War II, when the age of chemicals was, surfacing, and the promise was that we would all live forever, and not get sick anymore if we just used all this chemical stuff. And like you said, chemical medicine does play a very important part in our health, but I think it's just wiser. It makes more sense to use as effective medicine, but not nearly as many side effects or as expensive as modern medicine can be and is.
You mentioned the word side effect, the two words there, and every commercial that seems to be on TV now tells you about a great drug and then 10 different side effects that are bad for you. But not too many bad side effects from natural herbs, right? Unless you're allergic to them.
Well, the thing is when I with the plants is that, and especially with the ones that I talk about in the books, but what you can buy in the natural food stores and herb stores are only those herbs that have been tested by the government to be safe, and they have very, very few side effects. In fact, I always laugh and say the side effects are you feel better, you get healthier, you just feel better using them. But, occasionally there are idiosyncratic reactions, similar to what there are some people, if they eat strawberries, for instance, they might get a terrible reaction, but you don't see this big poison sign over strawberries that say, don't eat, we're toxic. So there are very few herbs where if people use them, they might get a little rash or a little bit of itchiness, like an allergic reaction or an upset stomach, and then you just stop, and immediately, within a couple of hours at least, it will go away. But I always like to point out, as far as the safety net goes with herbs in our National American Poison Control Center, they get so few calls toxicity to medicinal plants. They don't even have a special category for it. Whereas with modern medicine, it's the largest category. You know, there's they do get toxicity reports for house plants and mushrooms, but really, like with pharmaceuticals, there's over 100,000 deaths a year from legally prescribed prescription drugs. It's considered the fourth leading cause of death in the United States today. So we have a much better safety net with our herbal remedies.
I was happy to see. I grew up in Long Island, and we always had a plethora of dandelions that came up every spring, and I'm happy to see that dandelions have actually a beneficial effect if you prepare them right?
Well, dandelions are actually one of the most highly regarded medicines in many places in the world. It is. I think it's interesting. They're such a tenacious weed, and orthos kind of made them their cover girl, you know, found all the ortho magazines. But in truth, dandelion is winning the war because it will always come back. And that kind of tenacity is, I think, really awesome, you know, when you have something that's so powerful and strong. And medicinally, it does very much the same thing in our body. It's very rich in nutrients that feed and nourish our bodies and help with digestion and help with the kidney and the liver. So and they also can be used like food, so it's a safe medicine. In fact, there's very little known toxicity or reaction to using dandelion. And in parts of the world, like Italy, for instance, in the whole Mediterranean, dandelion is highly regarded because of the bitter principles. You know, the bitter principles in dandelion help to stimulate sluggish digestion. They actually help your digestion be much better. So eat dandelion greens, but just make sure they've not been sprayed first.
Right. Yeah, I've always heard, again, you talk about your mom and your grandmom. I think my grandmother used to talk about dandelion wine they used to have occasionally.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if they still make that, but I mean, it makes a lot of different things. Now, obviously, you know, these things are good for you, but I guess depending on what part of the country you're in, how do you get these different herbs? Are stores carrying them, or what's the best place to get these things to help you?
Well, that's a great question. You know, there's some wonderful online sources, a couple catalogs that I recommend because they carry a large amount of these plants and they're really in good quality. One is Mountain Rose, which is located in Oregon, and the other Dean's Greens, which is located in New York, and both of them have an online presence. But also, I really suggest people look locally. Like, you can usually find natural food stores now that carry very large selection. You can also find health herb stores all across the country. And many of the plants that I mentioned in my book are so common that you'll find them in the supermarket. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, things like garlic and ginger and horseradish and onion, all of those are really potent medicines, and they're going to be right in your produce department of any grocery store. And then you can walk over to the culinary section, and you find turmeric and thyme and sage. And again, all of those are very medicinal plants. The difference between when they're just culinaries and when we use them as medicine is really just in the preparation and the dosage. If you're sprinkling just a few little sprinkles in your omelet or your stir fry to make it taste good, then it's a flavoring agent, a spice, or a culinary. But when we make a cup of it or we take it as a tincture, then it becomes a medicine.
I know we're heading into the colder weather, particularly up where you live, Rosemary. What's the best thing? People are going to get concerned if they get a cold. What's a good herb to prevent it?
I know. Even people in Tampa, Florida, get colds, right?
Occasionally.
So it's very different. Up here in the north, it is a huge thing because there's so much. First of all, our winters are extremely long and cruel. They're very, very cold. And so in an area like this, we put a lot of emphasis on building preventative health, building your health up. And we use a lot of the warming culinaries, herbs like horseradish, absolutely, and garlic, which is called the poor man's penicillin, and ginger is another warming herb. But an herb like Echinacea in an area where you live, it would be just so nice to have. I think Echinacea also would grow in your area, and it's a beautiful, beautiful garden plant. But the root and also the leaves and flowers, too, are a broad-spectrum antiviral and also antibacterial agent, and they stimulate immune function. So Echinacea root has been studied and researched quite extensively. There's lots and lots of scientific research about it. But it stimulates, we know for certain that it stimulates white blood cell activity, which is one of your first lines of defenses once a bacteria or virus enters your body. And so it's really good for preventative medicine, is using Echinacea at the onset of a cold. Or if you're going to work and everybody at work is sick and you don't want to get that sickness, take a little Echinacea. That's good.
Good tip.
And then, and then for the for the flu season, I really recommend elderberry tincture and elderberry syrup, which is so delicious. And you can make it yourself.
Well, that's good to know, because people come to work coughing and sneezing, so good to know you can prevent it.
Yeah.
Well, the name of the book is Rosemary Gladstar's Medicinal Herbs, A Beginner's Guide. And Rosemary, do you have a website? I know you do. Let the people know where they can contact you.
Yeah, I can be contacted at sagemountain.com. We have a website that lists all my books and programs and my online correspondence course. So,
great.
Yeah.
Well, Rosemary, pleasure talking to you. Hopefully we can do it again down the road, but thanks for being with us today.
Great. Thanks so much. It's been a joy.
I'm Stan Brock. 30 years ago, I formed Remote Area Medical to help people overseas. But then we found generations of families in America isolated by poverty from the health care they need. Together, we can take dental, vision, and medical help to 1 million adults and their kids, right here at home in the United States of America.
If you'd like to order the book we're talking about, please go to DougMilesMedia.com and enter the author's name in the Amazon search box. Thank you for listening. Please come back soon for more conversations here at DougMilesMedia.com.
This has been a presentation of Doug Miles Media, all rights reserved. You can listen to or download previous programs at iTunes, Stitcher.com, or Doug Miles Media.